Good afternoon and welcome to our Thursday 12 noon webinar. Even though today we're starting a few minutes late, let me start by apologizing for that. We have some technical glitches that we're trying to resolve on our side, and the guests also are struggling for one or another reason to be on this webinar. We have them lined up. We can hear them. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to them whilst we are sorting out those back office problems. Now, we are going to discuss shared value today. We're going to talk about the support, if any, that is available out there in the country to support businesses that are in distress. We know the economy has been in trouble for some time, and the COVID-19 lockdowns worsened the situation. Small, medium-sized enterprises that did not have huge cash reserves experienced a lot of pressure, and some have had to close down, some in liquidation, some have been battling to raise money. And this has got a toll on even you, the entrepreneur or the business person. And therefore, I invited Adam Craker of IQBusiness. It's their business, and it's what Adam and his colleagues are involved in, to go out there, identify the businesses that are in trouble, try and help improve or update your business plan, get some financial resources or capital behind your business if they can, or integrate your business into networks or value chains that can help your business grow or survive. Graeme Butchart is in the business of developing and growing great people. I've invited him to also talk to us about the work that he's been doing assisting leaders and entrepreneurs who are dealing with massive problems that, as we know, can and do affect our personal lives and affect our families' lives. And we sometimes have got no clue where to go or who to turn to. So they are here with me, and welcome to you, the attendees as well. I would like you to pose your questions to them. This I'm merely facilitating on your behalf. And I want you to pose questions and make remarks to my guests, who are very competent people, and will be able to assist you in whatever way they can. Alan Craker, I can say, Adam Craker, I can see you, and thank you very much that we succeeded in your case to get you to be on the webinar so we can see you as well, and I hope you can hear me. Can you, Adam?
I can hear you loud and clear, Tim. Hopefully you can do the same.
Absolutely, and I can see you. So great to have you on this webinar. Adam, whilst we're still waiting for Graeme, let's go right away and talk about your personal interests and passions. And this is the kind of stuff that you do, not just as work or business, but because it's your passion. Tell me about this shared value mission of yours and how you go about living it through your organizations.
So Tim, probably the best way to provide a foundation to that would be to explain the role. My primary role at IQBusiness as chief executive is to oversee and run the leading independent management consulting firm in South Africa. And we have around 700 IQers, as we call ourselves, based in Johannesburg and Cape Town, working all over sub-Saharan Africa and various other exotic locations. We're a very purposeful organization. Our purpose is to grow people, grow business, and grow Africa. And as part of our purpose as an organization, we became a B Corporation 3 years ago, where we joined some 3,500 for-profit enterprises around the world that are seeking to not only make a profit as an enterprise, but to have impact on society, on the environment, and the economy at large. So that really provides the context for us as an organization, alongside many other organizations, in particular in your opening, as you were saying, that we've entered this period of unprecedented distress in our economy as we are probably heading towards an economic depression.
So once you set on this path, on this mission, you have been coming across a lot of businesses, I'd like to believe, and individuals who approach you for assistance or share with you their capabilities. What are the typical scenarios that you come across in South Africa during and post COVID-19?
So it seems like a long time ago now, Tim, but in March, when we got the news that the state of national disaster was being implemented, and we had a week before the commencement of lockdown, 2 days prior to the commencement of lockdown, we got together with 2 other partner organizations, Schindler's Attorneys and Engaged Business Turnaround, who are one of the country's leading business rescue organizations. And we decided we had to respond to the problem that was now unfolding. We, on the one side, have at that point an understanding of the health crisis, but we were clearly identifying that there was going to be a significant economic crisis that would continue to build. And of course, the South African economy was already in a very sorry state at that point. So we came together and we formed an organization called Cobra, C-O-B-R-A, which stands for the COVID Business Rescue Assistance Initiative. And on the first day of lockdown, we launched the Cobra website, which is cobra.org.za. And we have attracted 70 partner organizations, other businesses, other enterprises, a number of not-for-profit organizations that have joined the Cobra ecosystem with a single view of creating a shared value environment that is going to support businesses in distress of all shapes and sizes, whether those businesses are coming from the informal sector or the formal sector, whether they are sole proprietors or listed enterprises. We felt that we had to run towards the problem and provide support to the economic activity that very quickly was heading into a distressed state.
Well, the thinking most of the time in South Africa, when it comes to dealing with challenges in business or in the economy, is to look to the government for such solutions. And I think what you and your colleagues and partners have done is something innovative and is to be welcomed. People look to government because they feel that the colleagues in the business sector are not there to help or assist them, but rather to compete with them. We go to government for solutions, but government is not really in the business of running businesses. And then it takes long for policies to be formulated, for budgets to be determined, and for systems to be put in place to distribute whatever support that businesses may need. So how different is your model compared to the typical one that people look to in government?
Well, let me say in the first instance, Tim, that I think if we go back 8 months to March, government was absolutely and probably quite rightly at the time preoccupied with the health crisis. And the approach that government took through the state of national disaster and the lockdown process was really intended to safeguard lives in the South African context. The approach that we've taken from the outset is that we need to safeguard livelihoods, and we need to be absolutely aware that the health crisis was simply exacerbating the economic crisis. And we introduced the term or the metaphor that we are facing an economic tsunami. And the wave of destruction that will follow the health crisis is going to be with us for far longer and could indeed have far greater impact on lives and livelihoods than the health crisis itself. So we took a view that we couldn't wait for government. We certainly could partner with government, and we've been working extensively through the business member organizations like BUSA, Business Unity South Africa, Business for South Africa, the National Business Initiative, to engage in conversation and in support of the economic recovery and restructuring plan that is now going through the process of approval. But as a measure of really how long these things take, that's an 8-month process. We're only now seeing the recovery plan going through Parliament, being approved by Cabinet. And we simply couldn't wait for that process. And we've spoken before in the Cobra environment that whilst there is a think tank of activity in terms of putting plans together, Cobra represents a do tank of getting on with supporting distressed businesses and enterprises that need help on a day-to-day basis in order to sustain those businesses in our economy.
Louis Kruger wants to know what the profile of your typical client is before COVID-19 and after the lockdown, and what you do when you help such a business, as well as the fee structure for businesses in distress.
It's a great question from Lloyd. The typical profile has spanned a wide range of enterprises. For the most part, the bulk of our distressed businesses that have come to Cobra are small, medium and micro enterprises in a range of from 1 employee up to the largest size that we've seen of 2,500 employees. And the profile of those businesses are that they are supported, of course, through primary banking relationships. 44% of them are supported through banking relationships with FNB, and then around 27% with Standard Bank and 17% with ABSA. And in fact, what we've created, Lloyd, through the Cobra website is a very transparent management information system that if you go to the Cobra website and click on Cobra Insights, you can see the profile of businesses, the activities that we are providing or the support that we are providing to them. Predominantly, those businesses are requesting funding support in the first instance. Secondly, they're requesting business rescue or advice on how to use bankruptcy protection in the South African context to sustain those enterprises. We use a means-tested process to assess whether the organization that is asking for assistance can afford to pay for that assistance. And we use the probono.org approach, which is basically looking at if that business in paying for services would be pushed into an insolvent state, then the cost of those services is waived. And that goes for, as I said, any size of enterprise that has come into the Cobra ecosystem. And just to give you an understanding of the kind of numbers that we've seen so far, through our social media campaign, we've reached about 1 million individuals and impressions that have been made through social media. About 500,000 individuals have been reached. We've had 20,000 uses of our knowledge base, our webinars, our information services. And that's really a self-help mechanism where we provide access through the website. And so far, we have in the region of around 250 enterprises that are being supported through our assisted service, where the enterprises themselves have access to the 70 partners, and indeed there are some 230 subject matter experts that are provided by those partner organizations that are providing a directed service and support to those distressed enterprises.
Let me bring Graeme Butchart in here. We cannot see him, his pictures of but we can hear him. Graeme, thank you very much for joining us as leadership coach and developer of people. Obviously, over the COVID-19 period, even in the lead up to it, you came across a lot of individuals in business who were going through a stressful time, not knowing how they were going to turn their businesses around or how they were going to fend for their families. What are the typical instances or situations that you've come across?
Hi, Tim, and hi, everyone that's tuning in. Hi, Adam. I can see you, Adam, but I wasn't able to switch off and switch on again. That seemed to be the trick in terms of showing myself. And Adam, so proud of what you've done in terms of setting up Cobra there and that active engagements that you're setting up. That's so impressive, really. So great kudos to you and everyone else involved in that. And it sort of jumped back to what Tim said in terms of there is in the back of everybody's mind, Tim, I think there's this strange thing that lurks that somewhere says, oh, well, government will help us, you know. And I think that's an awful default setting. I don't think South Africa's alone in that. I think that seems to be something that we've grown up with hereditarily, you know, that we expect somehow somebody to step in and save us when things are tough and when things are difficult. But the big truth and the big realization is that in this ever-changing world, this unpredictable, this VUCA world that we're all living in, which has just been accelerated with this awful pandemic, the real truth is instead of turning outwardly for help, we now have to go through that awful realization that we need to go inward. Okay, so we need to actually go deeper into ourselves and the resources that we have internally to help us navigate these broader challenges. So what Adam's setting up and what Adam's organization is setting up are really valuable, hugely important technical support systems, but there's an internal realization that has to occur for many people as well. Okay, so this idea that somehow there's this external support that's going to arrive and save me, that's unfortunately that's a childish mindset, and it's an entitlement mindset, and it's all of those kind of mindsets. We've got to free ourselves from that, and we've got to realize that we have incredible resilience. Human beings all have deeply and profoundly strong resilience within them. So part of this journey through and navigating this does require that we have to get a better understanding of who we are. So a lot of what I've been doing is around the subject of personal mastery, accessing our emotional intelligence, going into those soft, fuzzy things that corporate businesses are dreadfully scared of, okay? That inside us, and there are huge resources that we need to continually access more frequently. We need a mind shift in our thinking, and we need to start pulling on the human resilience that we have. And I'm not suggesting that we remain alone. I'm suggesting that we collaborate on that level in conjunction with what Adam is so strongly supporting. You know, there is.
Well, I mean, if I may come in there, Graeme, yeah. and the next question will go to you, Adam. I've got a couple of points coming from our attendees as well. One of the things I have observed, and probably have gone through that myself whenever you go through pressure, is to be embarrassed, to be ashamed of the fact that all this is happening to you. I mean, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a small business owner who sees his business going under and feels guilty and starts thinking that maybe he did not read the situation correctly, or that the person was irresponsible, because now you've got to sell your house and you've got to give up a lot of things, that you are a complete failure. What advice would you give in a situation where a person loses all of those internal resources that you mentioned, Graeme, and starts thinking that they are not worthy, or that they are not smart enough, or that they should not have been involved in the enterprises that they got involved in? Where do you start? I mean, how do you coach yourself, motivate yourself to get going?
Therein lies the first, and I can see Adam enthusiastically wanting to address that as well. But therein lies the first challenge. And the first challenge in that scenario is the battle against your own mind.
Yeah.
So you've got this huge fight now against your own mind, your own value. You suddenly forget that for years you have been successful. You've competed in a highly competitive environment, and you've survived. That means you're successful. And suddenly, through circumstances outside of your control, your back's against the wall and you've lost. Okay, so you can't help but go to that mental state. There's the first battle. Okay, and that first battle is you against your mind. So a lot of the work that needs to happen is the understanding of how our minds work. All right, and today we have a far higher level of understanding the neuroscience of this. So we can actually, if we're smart about this, we can override a lot of that thinking, lift ourselves into a position where we can do the practical things that Adam is setting up for us, that Cobra is enabling. So Tim, that's it. The first challenge is to understand your own mind. But I can see Adam wanting to respond to that as well.
Yes, Adam, please comment before I go to Edward, who also has got a question for us.
Well, I absolutely agree with what Graeme is saying, and the context that we are now facing of the economic tsunami, or the crisis that we face. We have never seen anything like this in our lifetime, and in fact, ever in the history of the world, in terms of the global and the local contraction in our economy. Those are unprecedented circumstances, as you say, Graeme. There is no shame that in terms of really embracing or recognizing that we need to respond to that. And I also want to emphasize, I think, the point that you're making, that this is traumatic. This is on a level of pressure and mental stress that we've never seen. And indeed, within the Cobra ecosystem, we've been joined by Lifeline as one of our partners, who have been inundated and very actively involved in supporting the psychosocial dimensions of what the situation is creating for enterprise and business leaders who are trying to keep a hold of employees and keep those employees within their business, make debt payments, ensure that they don't lose their homes, as you say, Tim. It really is unprecedented, the pressure that we're seeing. And there's also a degree, as Graeme was saying, of immaturity. There's actually a high degree of immaturity in the South African context. When we talk about business rescue as a mechanism, it is the least understood aspect of the Companies Act. And every enterprise that we engage with that has signed up to or put into place and registered their enterprise at CIPC has in effect signed up to the Companies Act. But I think it's understandable that one doesn't tend to look at the clauses and the sections about what to do when your business is in distress, when your creditors are demanding payment, when your landlord is unwilling to be flexible in terms of the rental or rates that are due. It's those sections that are least understood. And if I can just parallel to that, if we think about the US marketplace and we think about bankruptcy protection, Chapter 7, Chapter 11, Chapter 16 filing in the US, it's very, very well understood. And it's an accepted norm in society that individuals or enterprises can get into a distressed situation and they need the protection of bankruptcy filing to enable them to re-engineer, reorganize, preserve the asset base and sustain the organization to be able to move forward. In South Africa, we don't have that maturity, and we have some very high profile cases of business rescue that really haven't produced the outcome, and we need to advance that maturity and that understanding to really move things forward.
Yeah, and you know, the question I did ask because of the devastating nature it has on the individuals concerned and their families, you know, besides the fact that people get retrenched in the process, but you know, a lot of people get destroyed as a result of that experience. Edward Nelwembeni says, are the finance institutions reviewing their funding requirements in accordance with the challenges of COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on the businesses? What is your sense, Adam?
Very much. I mean, there's been quite a lot of press over the last, in particular over the last month, about the government-backed COVID-19 loan schemes. And if we remember, I think it was in April when President Ramaphosa launched the 500 billion rand package, which included up to 200 billion rand in government-backed loans. The reality is that that's actually 100 billion that government have earmarked with the ability to extend it to 200 billion. Of that, only at this stage, 16 billion has been issued or has been taken up. And I'm sure that your viewers will appreciate that the way that the government-backed loan scheme is administered is through the banks. And there's been much criticism and much discourse, including with the Banking Association of South Africa, about why we are not seeing a more active take-up of the loans and funding. In particular, when I go back to the fact that the #1 reason that we are receiving requests through Cobra is for funding, and that indeed about half of those funding requests that are coming into Cobra, those enterprises have already gone to their banks and have already applied, but have not been successful at securing funding or loans that are there. So it really is a need for us to look critically at the approach that we're taking and to ensure that the measures that we're putting into place to support worthy enterprises. And I think it's important that we need to understand that there were many enterprises that were not in a healthy position prior to the commencement of lockdown. And in fact, some of those enterprises need to be liquidated in order to preserve the underlying asset base so that the founders of those businesses can launch a new business that is going to be able to participate in the unfolding new economy.
Yeah.
And
Tim,
Kruger, yeah. Yes, Graeme?
I just love the point that Adam made there, because I think that's also, I've seen some of that as well, is that COVID, what COVID has done, and we're going to see it at some point in the future as very valuable, okay? Because in some instances, what it's done is it's woken a lot of people up to the harsh reality that what they are offering as a product, as a service, is not that relevant any longer. They've been clinging on to historic trading practices, historic relationships, and people have woken up and said, hang on, do I need this? No, I don't need this. I'm moving forward as the rest of the world's moving forward. So what that speaks to as well is this, and I come back to what Adam said there, this immaturity, okay, or lack thereof, right? This is an opportunity to reinvent yourself. This is an opportunity to reinvent your business, okay? So that speaks to, how do I see who I am in a different way? What is the shift in bias thinking that I have that is required of me, my colleagues, our enterprise at this point in time? Do we not have to have a serious conversation about that? You know, And Adam, I think you've pointed to the fact that Cobra has some of that stuff available for people, but do people know enough? Are people willing enough and ready enough to get involved in that kind of conversation?
Louis Kruger is back and says he agrees with you, Graeme, on the internal approach, but he asks, change is happening so fast that we need to learn how to manage reality. And that is where a lot of people lack the resources to do so. I mean, like the point that you've just made now, that of course, COVID has thrown new challenges and we've got to adapt fast. But how do you do that? Is there any practical way, or you just sit it out, you wait it out, you go through it and hope for the best that in 3-6 months time or so, you will get it and make the appropriate changes? Or are there any particular creative tools or ideas that you can apply immediately to change the way you think about situations?
Well, Tim, if I may, let me give an example, a real example of one of the enterprises that came into Cobra and that picks up on the point that Graeme has just made around relevancy and about being able to move or pivot into the emerging economy and emerging markets that we see. We had an enterprise, a family-owned business that came into Cobra asking for assistance. It's a gym equipment business that prior to the commencement of lockdown was making 75% of its revenues from selling gym equipment to the major gym chains in South Africa and the corporate market and servicing that market. Now, of course, at the commencement of lockdown, their entire market was shut down and indeed was predicted to remain closed for many months. And so 75% of their market had disappeared. 25% of their market was in the home gym sector. And very quickly, they saw an opportunity to pivot their business from selling into the corporate sector into actively engaging with the smaller part of their market in the home gym sector. Within 3 months of recognizing that transition and engaging and using social media and online or e-commerce capability, they had achieved their highest revenue month in their history by being able to quickly, within a 3-month period, pivot over to that space. So it's really about spotting those opportunities and being able to move very actively in a very agile way to take advantage of those.
Yeah.
Adam Craker is the CEO of IQBusiness, and Graeme Butchart is the developer of Great People and also author of the book, The Genius Program. And we're talking about shared value here. We're also talking about the Cobra organization, groups of companies, or a consortium rather, of companies that have come together to assist businesses in distress. And I brought them together, Adam and Graeme, to help us, because there are a lot of people hurting out there, but who would like to add value and participate meaningfully in this economy. And we know that the extension of successful businesses is that employment gets created in the process, and that contribution is made to the greater or the bigger South African economy. If you want to talk to us, please do so. You can post your questions. I've already received a few from Kruger, Louis, Edward Nelumbani, as well as Hunty Kruger. Thank you very much for always being with us on this webinar. Now, there's the question of confidence in the public domain, Adam, that business people like talking about and say the environment is not conducive, meaning the bigger political environment. What is your view of how South Africa Incorporated is dealing with the current problem of a lot of businesses being shut down, 2 million people losing jobs in the past 3 to 6 months, 82 billion rands of household incomes being lost in the process, people facing desperation, and even the optimistic feeling downcast and getting or having a sense that things are not going to turn around?
Well, Tim, let me give some very bad news. I think at this point is that if we think it's bad now, wait until the first and second quarters of next year. It's going to get far worse. And I say that because in that metaphor for the economic tsunami, we're actually at the stage, we believe at this point, where the tide is still going out, and that everybody is almost drawn in this spectacle of going to see the seabed. We can now see the seabed, and there are lots of fish flapping around on the base of the seabed. And what we need to do is raise our eyes to look to the horizon, because the wave of destruction in our economy is yet to hit. We've seen massive layoffs in terms of unemployment. We've seen a massive impact on our economy. We expect the economy this year to contract in excess or in the region of double digits. Where it will end, we will only know next year. But we are forecasting from a Cobra perspective that we could be outlooking a 14 to a 17% GDP contraction. That's massive, that's unprecedented. But the impact of the wave of destruction, as I said, will only really, I think, become clear next year. And we need to be ready for that. We need to be building for that. And we need to get from the beach to high ground as quickly as possible. Standing there looking at the seabed might be fascinating at this point, but we need to be heading for high ground. We must be collaborating together. Yeah. We must be uniting and unifying across business, across labor, and across government. And if I may just say so, we were somewhat taken aback by being approached by the labor unions into Cobra. And the first labor union that approached us was SACTRU, the South African Clothing and Textile Workers Union. And they approached us because they recognize that a number of the enterprises where their members are employed are in distress. And they asked us to engage with them, to engage with those distressed enterprises. So we've already got a business and labor movement that is collaborating for a common or a shared value objective. We're now seeking to engage with government to collaborate and engage in the same way.
Yeah.
You wanted to add, Graeme?
Yeah, okay. You know, it's a terrifying picture that Adam presents us, and the metaphor is an understandable one. I think that's very valuable. A couple of things that come to mind for me immediately is when you say, you know, let's raise our eyesight. I think that's very important. You know, because it doesn't assist us. It doesn't help us to keep looking down. Okay, so part of coming back to your question, Tim, regarding confidence. Okay, and if we look at the science of confidence, okay, it comes from knowing that if you dwell in the negative, that's just going to create more. Okay, so you actually have to actively lift the mindset and lift the internal narrative to the positive. Okay, so wherever there is a story of hope, like the gym story that you've just shared, okay, we should be sharing collectively and collaborating on assisting each other with those miracle occurrences, big, small, and medium. We should be actively out promoting that stuff. We should be dismissing as much of the negative narrative as we can. So, and that's got to be that collaborative again, Adam, across the spectrum. So where you've got unions coming in, wow, isn't that something refreshing? Because these are the people that have very, very fixed mindsets regarding their role, how they show up, what they do, what they don't do. These people also have to free themselves from their traditional mindsets to work together, to collaborate together. It's never going to serve us if we dwell in the negative. There's no value in it for us at all. So our only option is to raise our eyes, as you rightly say, Adam, and then ask each other, how do we get to that high ground?
Sure. Now, Kruger Louis is back and says we need to prepare how to manage the challenges and get ready to exploit opportunities. Forget about business as usual. Says, I agree with Adam's predictions. We seriously need to learn how to develop the best attitude for what is coming at us. But having said that, I go back to the feeling of helplessness where people would listen to you, Adam, and say, well, if you are predicting that conditions are going to get worse, that the GDP is going to contract by 14% to 17% next year in the first 2 quarters of next year, I may as well close shop. There's no future, there's no hope for me. And I take you back to a point you made earlier on about the CIPC, bank filing for bankruptcy or seeking help, that practically, you know, if you were to give advice to someone who's operating a business that's already in trouble at this time, what should they do? What are the steps that they should take to rescue whatever they can?
So Tim, there is no shame in asking for help in the first instance. What we are seeing, and this goes back to what Graeme was saying earlier on, is that there's a degree of burying one's head in the sand. There's a degree of putting off investigating or asking for assistance. And very often we are seeing enterprise leaders come to Cobra when actually it's too late, or they could have asked for assistance far earlier. They could have developed their understanding of whether it is a business rescue process or legal support or the options that are open to them. So I think in the first instance, acting early and engaging early is absolutely imperative. And Tim, I'm reminded of the fact that the reason why you and I started to have this conversation together was I saw you post on Twitter that yes. You had seen every day we've now become accustomed to seeing the latest statistics in the broadcast media or in the print media on the infection rate or on the health crisis, on the recovery rate and the death rate. And I'm reminded of the fact that when I walk past ENCA in our office and I see on the screen and they have that little tab in the corner that says level 1 in the corner. Well, what's the point of that? I'm not expecting to see that dynamically change. I think we need to shift our focus back to that horizon to say, let's start reporting on a daily basis on the economy. Let's start reporting on the business successes that are coming through, not the dramas. I mean, we're all fully aware of the SAA situation and the drama that has unfolded there. And it makes for an interesting movie, perhaps, in the future. But what we want to hear about is the successes, the steps that have been moved forward. Let me give you another one. Spark Schools, which is an independent private school network of just over 20 schools serving about 13,000 learners in the South African society, principally in the low to middle income segment. They very quickly went into distress at the beginning of lockdown because parents couldn't afford to pay for their kids and the kids were not at school. But they've successfully raised 350 million rand from foreign investors to support the next round of funding in their business and in their enterprise. That's fantastic. And we need to be able to build on those stories of success and the lessons that are being learned and to communicate that actively to engage as society to sustain our economy and move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and thanks for raising and reminding me of that, Adam, because, you know, I suppose being in business and operating a business is a very lonely, solitary journey for a lot of people. And people are not aware that there are other individuals who are going through similar problems as themselves. And the networking that should take place is not really taking place the way it should, except for membership of of organizations, and that's about it, where probably policy or government engagement is what is discussed and not what the individual entrepreneurs are going through. And Graeme, your comment?
Yeah, I mean, I just, I completely support what Adam is saying there. I think we've got to we've got to make that shift in our thinking. We've got to start taking initiatives quicker than we are, all of us. Okay, we've got to be saying to ourselves, if what I've been doing isn't working, then it isn't working, right? So I need to go about this in an entirely different way, and that means I need to reach out. I need to collaborate. I need to wake up to the fact that this isn't a disaster. It's an opportunity. Okay. So what do I have to learn that is going to put me in the frame for the next round? What have I got to improve on who I am? And you can't do that unless you have a deeper understanding of who you are to begin with. Okay. So we've got to wake up. We've got to mature. We've got to grow up a little bit here, and stop believing that there is some magic bullet that's going to fix everything. Okay.
I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing or a South African experience thing, Graeme and Adam. I'm just thinking now because of what's going on in the United States and the focus being on the elections there. So I'm thinking of that culture when it comes to doing business, right? That for some reason, and this is a much older democracy to South Africa, and probably the business culture there was established for a much longer time. But I get a sense that Americans, as an example, have got an attitude that they will always be on top of things, that they will somehow find a way and become successful in business. It's like something they expect of themselves as a nation, but more importantly, as individuals. What is it that is unique about the United States that makes young people in particular be so ambitious and so focused and achieve so much success, at least the ones that we know of? Is there anything that South Africa could learn from the United States and even other cultures around the world on how to go about overcoming problems of this nature and achieving success? Because
Tim,
to lose confidence and faith here is an easy thing. I beg your pardon? Go ahead.
I was going to say, Tim, it is the American dream. It is, as you suggest, it's part of the culture that America creates an environment for entrepreneurs, for self-employment, for being independent, and encouraging phenomenal stories and the growth of enterprises that are now global enterprises that have come, particularly in the US, from immigrants that have arrived in the US that have been penniless, that have been able to take a business idea into an enterprise and into a scaled model, using all the mechanisms, the funding, the support, and the maturity and the acceptance that is there. And I think we can learn a great deal. I gave the example of accelerating our understanding of how business rescue is actually a very positive mechanism that we should acknowledge and accept and use in the South African economy, as much as learning from the US. And we don't, for example, in South Africa, have a developed venture capital system or an environment where South Africans with good ideas can access funding and support. So again, we need to advance and learn from the venture capital mature markets like the US or Israel, or to some extent the UK and others, to be able to accelerate the maturity of our economy and the resilience of our economy to move forward. I think has great potential as an emerging economy to be able to advance and move forward very quickly.
Yeah, I just want to add something there, Tim. Your reference to the Americans, right? Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with various kinds of Americans. As you find, you know, various kinds of Polish people and Chinese people, right? And South African people for that matter as well. And one of the things that America do have, and I think it does come from that, that American dream culture, they have, and this is broad, right? I'm speaking broadly. I'm not speaking for all of them. I'm speaking very generically. One of the things that they do have is they have a remarkably high work ethic, okay? They put in the hours, okay? They are not set back by small things. They hold accountable. I'm being generic, right? They hold themselves accountable. If they say they're going to do something, they do it, okay? So it seems pretty obvious, but this is all grown-up material, right? It's all about being a grown-up. It's all about taking responsibility, being accountable. And if you need to fix something in who you are, you're not operating at a level you should do, they get coached, okay? They go and do extra work. They have other jobs, okay? So there's a high work ethic culture. They don't have 25 holidays a year, okay? They work through.
I suppose also the sense of achieving something from when they're still at a young age in schools, and they get celebrated for whatever humble achievements from early grades at school, and earning scholarships and all of those things, and recognition at the workplace and in the media for that matter. I mean, we are here in South Africa, but you'll know of any American who achieves something one way or another, their stories get pushed out there. But in South Africa, we're not that informed of the many people who are making great things happen. Edward, I'm giving you the last word. You say Graeme touched on what you wanted to ask about collaboration. Are South African financial institutions ready to syndicate funding, or are they still happy to compete? Maybe Adam, you should comment on that. And the last point I will give to you, still from Edward Nelumbeni, who says we have to address the issue of entitlement to everything. Those who want to be entrepreneurial in South Africa expect the government to give them grants and to do stuff for them, and there's a great sense of entitlement, and that does not help, will not make us compete like Americans can, and not only Americans, but other cultures as well. So the first one, Edward, banks ready to syndicate or not? And then the last comment to you, Graeme.
So no, they're not ready to syndicate, and in fact, they're prevented from syndicating. We've actively engaged with the Banking Association of South Africa, and there are good reasons why the boundaries are drawn there. But one of the things that we need to advance very quickly is the post-commencement funding arena, which is how businesses in distress can access distressed funding, how they can get access very quickly to new terms, to new approaches. And as I said earlier on, the government-backed COVID-19 loan scheme is not working at this point, and that presents an opportunity to bring the funders together in a new way to do something different.
And Graeme, your comment of what Edward calls entitlement in South Africa, that is maybe an unintended consequence that might be fueled by the fact that government actually always talks about giving stuff to people, and therefore has created demand, so to speak, for whatever help government promises.
Yeah, so we're our own worst enemy in that respect. Okay, there is an awful level of entitlement. Okay, and it comes back to, folks, let's wake up, right? Let's be real about this, and let's look at our mindsets, because that isn't going to help us. It's not going to help us to have that kind of mindset. How does it serve me?
Sure. Well, as we conclude our webinar, let me go back to where we started. Adam, you know, we met and chatted over Twitter in particular about focusing on growing the economy and the types of indicators or metrics that we should focus on. Let me take you up on that. Let's see what we can do and bring it to life. Otherwise, it will remain a wishful thing, type of thing that is never brought to life. And then a couple of months down the line, we'll be back to square one, complaining again. And you know, when you operate from entitlement, then you give yourself license to complain all the time. And that's not what we want. We want to find a way of raising our eyes to the horizon, as you suggested. And Graeme, thanks very much for your inputs as well, reminding us that the power lies within. If we can just activate that and look for ways and means of empowering ourselves and trusting that we can overcome whatever challenges, that's a good way to start. And collaborate with those who are willing to support us or join the networks that are very supportive, like Cobra. Then, one way or another, we will be able to survive and to overcome and achieve and make the contributions that we all can make. Adam, Craker, thank you. I appreciated your time. Graeme, thank you. And to our attendees and those who posted your questions, thank you very much. Hanti, I know you are always with us on this webinar. I want to appreciate you too. This is how we end it this Thursday. We'll be back again next week, 12 noon on a Thursday.